believer that this team's going to win the national championship.
Something stupid is coming out of his mouth.
I don't know. Maybe it's just my age. He needs his vote pulled immediately. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name.
Let's talk about something good about Justin Freck. What are you doing?
Season of dreams. Ohio State, my guys, are either the best or the second best program in the history of college football.
This guy is a bonehead. They love him.
I question your judgment as an adult. I really do.
I was a total hater. I know that for a fact, and I just don't get it.
Get us back our sleeves.
And say, bring me that. That's the one I want.
Let's get it. We got a new intro. What do you guys think? I worked like 2 hours on that thing, man. It took forever, but I think I like it. I think we're going to stick with it. I don't know. Let me know how you feel in the chat, and good morning to everybody in that chat. A wonderful Monday morning at Juck on Bucks after a really entertaining weekend of college football. And it's always so much more enjoyable when your team plays at noon and you get to watch the rest of the college football slate stress-free with a goofy smile on your face, which I had all the way through, probably this morning. But if you came here to see the normal Juck on Bucks on a Monday with Juck and Chris, your buddies from Akron, it's not going to happen today, as last night at 6 p.m. I got a message from Chris that he will not be able to join us. And I'm not teasing you. I'm not about to pull him up from the bottom and surprise you. No Chris today. We'll see if I can carry the show on my own today and do a decent job for you guys. But no Chris. But I did. I had a huge smile on my face last night as he was texting me, and I wrote that second page of notes for a solo man show. And I was watching more clips roll in from the game, because we had so many that just kind of staggered in on social media, all the reactions after that game. And I definitely want to pull some of those clips up to make sure everybody gets to see them. Some really cool stuff, man. Some really cool stuff. And a big day in college football tomorrow as the first college football playoff rankings come out. And those rankings can tell us a lot about what people are thinking, what the committee's thinking about where certain teams are, what they're valuing. The first rankings always very important, and the nightmare scenario still exists for the SEC and the Big Ten, who both desperately want a minimum of 4 teams in, and there are ways that might not happen, and we're going to talk about those as well today, as well as recapping the weekend and a couple of the best games. Also, an interesting fact about Indiana that I noticed last night when I was going through their stuff, something that I did not quite realize about them, that maybe makes me feel a little differently about them. We'll talk about that as well. But on the field after the game Saturday, some amazing scenes. There were a lot of us, myself included, all week last week that felt like something was just a little off with this Ohio State team, whether it was a hangover from the loss at Oregon, who knows? Something was just not clicking. And the biggest comment I saw last week was what I just characterize as juice. Can't quantify it. It's not a statistic, but you know it when you see it, and you certainly know it when you don't see it. And the Buckeye team did not show it against Nebraska at all. And when people call Ryan Day's team soft, it's usually coming from haters. A lot of Buckeye fans say it too. You can really boil it down to 2 things. Lack of juice is one of them. Lack of mad dogs out there that just make you feel like confident they're going to bust heads. And poor trench play. Not enough focus or development on the lines of scrimmage, which I consider to be Ohio football identity. And it certainly bothered me over the years at times, definitely when you play big-time opponents. That Oregon game, for instance, I thought we were going to win the lines of scrimmage. I don't feel we came away feeling like that. But against Penn State, the Buckeyes won that area. They passed it with flying colors on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. A decisive victory on the lines of scrimmage, which I think has changed my entire attitude, really. It was so awesome to watch. But let's check out the first clip, and one of my favorites that came out of the game. And it was just a simple clip of the Ohio State cheerleaders coming on and leading the team onto the field. It's just simple. The sea of white and blue, the raining down of boos, and what a scene it was Saturday. The Penn State players in the end zone as the Buckeyes run on the field. I just love this thing. None of those guys, no matter how many years they play in the NFL or what they do for the rest of their career, will ever play in front of a crowd that size, 111,000. And again, something else that is uniquely awesome about college football. There's nothing else like it in American sport. And that scene Saturday was so cool. And when we heard Dylan on Saturday, if you haven't watched the Sound Off show, the growl is so annoying, Doreen. That stupid growl. I've hated that thing since I was a kid, man. But Dylan telling us about the press box swaying up there, which I always love those stories about press boxes swaying and stuff. The second clip, Will Howard immediately after the win walking off the field. And I think if you are a fan of Ohio State, this one should give you a lot of feel goods, man, because what you've got here is Will Howard walking off the field being greeted by Kenyatta Jackson, CJ Hicks, Edric Houston, and Coach Mick, Chipper the Ripper. But my point is, and Saturday, when you watch those post-game comments from Will, the leadership he exudes is just crazy. But I think it's very telling when you've got guys like Kenyatta, CJ Hicks, Edric Houston, a true freshman defensive player. Football teams are big, man, 120 dudes, and there's pockets of buddies, pockets of friends. It's not like your high school locker room where everybody goes to school together, everybody's friends, it's smaller. This is a big operation, and you're not friends with everybody. But to see those guys, a freshman defensive player and the starting quarterback, a senior, could not be further away in terms of how closely they're involved on a day-to-day in most situations. In this situation, Edric Houston was one of the first guys to come up to him, and it says a lot to me.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
That's awesome right there. And some things just mean a little more. I mean, when you've got defensive players coming up, this guy's not been there long. That is certainly someone who has shown everybody on the team that he's someone who's going to get down, do the dirty work with all of them and be right there with them. And that's what it takes to get that kind of buy-in. And I got a lot of comments saying even after that game that the way he plays quarterback is going to get you burned at some point. Didn't happen on Saturday, but it's going to get you burned. And to those people, I would just say, take a look around the competition here. Speaking of that competition, the most newly released updated odds have come out, and of the 8 major books, Ohio State odds-on favorite to win the national championship, followed by Georgia or Oregon, and they mix between 2 to 3, Texas 4th, and then again another big gap down to 5. So right back to where we started, the only difference is, and what everybody told me at the beginning of the year when I said Ohio State should be the favorite, was Georgia has the veteran quarterback that threw for 4,000 yards, and that's the difference. But let's look at the quarterbacks of those competitors. Carson Beck for Georgia just had another terrible game, 3 interceptions. Quinn Ewers coming back off that injury. He's not been so great. He got pulled for Arch in one of those games, and Arch wasn't so great. Jaden Milroe at Alabama, that guy can get Alabama beat. Notre Dame's now number 5. Riley Leonard, give me Will, man. Give me Will. Nico Iamaleava, I mean, the kid's a pup. He's made a lot of mistakes. He's not put on a lot of good film yet so far. Ton of potential. Cam Ward at Miami, guy's pure firepower, but he can also get you beat as well. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, 515 yards and 6 touchdowns on Saturday. That's pretty damn good. most people would put Will Howard towards the lower end of those guys, the quarterbacks of the main competition here as we go down the playoff stretch here coming up. But outside of a couple of them, I think he is just the absolute right fit for this team. There's a lot of good about Will Howard, a whole lot. Coming back from that 10-0 deficit in the biggest moment of the game, he led the team right down the field and threw a decently long touchdown pass to score the touchdown there to Emeka. At the end of the game, he had the ball in his hand. I mean, the offensive line won that game, but he was leading them in the huddle, and the ball was in his hand to salt it away on a run. He's far from perfect, but I think what he's shown us so far is he is just the right guy for this team. And I think they absolutely made the right choice. Could not be happier for him. And I want to go to now the post-game celebration and check that out. I know a lot of people have seen this, but this is from the locker room. And these are the coaches with the weight of the world on their shoulders coming into this game, just kind of letting it loose. That's Jim Knowles at the end, if you didn't catch that. And that is, a lot of people love that clip, man. I think that's awesome. The way they celebrated this one felt much different, even in the aftermath of one of the last big games was the comeback victory at Notre Dame in 2023. It was nothing like that. It was pretty cool, but it was nothing like that. The other thing about Will Howard, and something that people were talking about to me in the offseason, was when you really needed him at the end of the game, was he going to be able to provide with that weak arm that can't throw downfield? If we look at the last 3 games now, and he's had 3 moments to kind of prove that against Oregon, he took him right down the field, and the Bucs didn't win that game. But when he completed that pass to J.J. Smith, they were very much in makeable field goal range before that penalty got called. And then with that run at the end of the game, if he gets down a second earlier, or they maybe properly call that, who knows? You're looking at a 49-yard field goal. So he got you a chance in that one. The very next game in Nebraska, when you absolutely needed it most, he got you down the field. And for the 3rd game in a row against Penn State, again, offensive line won that, backs won that, he won that too. Team effort, but the ball was in his hand at the end of the game to salt that puppy away. So my confidence is growing with Will Howard as the quarterback of this team. And there are some certain intangibles that he has that I think a lot of those guys on that list absolutely do not. And that's for sure. Dave talking about the dancing circle. Awesome when you win. When you lose, it's pretty cringe, no doubt. Buck says he bets Noel's legs are sore today. Yeah, he was definitely getting down. Definitely getting down. But on the James Franklin side, man, on the Penn State side, James Franklin exiting the stadium into the tunnel here, followed by some fans with his daughters in tow. Following him with the Fire Franklin chants, and they got it down bad. That's pretty toxic right there. I do want to add, for all the Ohio State is toxic crowd, which I'm just so sick of hearing, man. Go pop on a Penn State message board this week. They lost by 1 score to a top 5 team, still got a great path to the playoffs. And if you check out Lions 24/7 or Black Shoe Diaries, you'd think they were 1-11 right now. It's college football. You don't need to like it. It's not unique. Do we have unrealistic standards? Do you think so? I don't know. Go check in on Tennessee. They sucked for 20 years, and their expectations never changed. They're every bit as rabid, critical, and demanding as Ohio State fans. When Ohio State fans were saying, why the hell would David Sanders be down to Tennessee and Ohio State? How are those even comparable? They were saying the same thing. So imagine being both demanding and annoying and totally unself-aware, like, because they think that they are a better program than Ohio State. How about Alabama? Nick Saban averaged a national championship every 3 years, and in those 2 off years in between them, they went crazy. And a large portion of that fan base already wants Kalen DeBoer fired year 1 before he gets too entrenched in the job because they think he's a bad fit. He's 6-2, beat Georgia in his first year, maintained the #1 talent composite after losing guys like Julian Sayin, Caleb Downs, and has put together the #1 recruiting class. And they want him gone. Georgia, they pounded the table for Kirby gone early on. And it's not like he was doing bad. He just wasn't cashing in, wasn't beating Bama, still isn't. Nothing is unique about Ohio State fans in this echelon of college football. The top of the top, they're all crazy, unrealistic, spoiled, sure. But it's not unique. There's a portion of rude people and jerks in every group of people. And when your group just happens to be the biggest group of people, there's going to be more rude jerks. So I'd suggest pointing the finger at those who are rude and jerks instead of saying about our own people that we're toxic and we're entitled and we're this and that. It's just something that's really been bothering me, man. I've seen so much of it the last couple of weeks. It's okay to be critical. The team and the coach and the players were critical of themselves. Anyway, one of the issues that the Penn State fans had with Franklin was not getting the ball to Tyler Warren. And thank goodness that they didn't. Who knows how that ends up? That guy legitimately, not just a great athletic tight end, great runner of the football, but was committed to Virginia Tech as a quarterback. So not a gimmick putting him back there at all. And again, all we heard all week was about Andy Kotelnicki. Jim Knowles ate his lunch. He didn't score a touchdown against Jim Knowles. The last time that guy's offense didn't score a touchdown was when Jim Knowles was going against him, when Jim Knowles was at Oklahoma State and Kotelnicki was at Kansas. So Jim Knowles got that dude's number. But I want to describe a scenario for you, a playoff scenario, because I've been running through a lot of these when I was going through the notes in the end of the day roundup. There is a scenario here where Penn State, let's say Indiana beats Ohio State. Let's just say that happens. Ohio State is now 10-2. Indiana and Oregon go to the Big Ten championship in that scenario. Ohio State and Penn State both win the rest of their games, but neither can get to the Big Ten championship. You've got a 10-2 Ohio State and an 11-1 Penn State, neither of whom made the championship game. We're the playoff committee. How do those resumes look? Ohio State's biggest wins, well, really just one big win, on the road to the #3 team in the country. Their losses to the #3 team in the country at their place, and then an Indiana team at home, which at that point will be number 10 inside the top 10. So a top 10 loss and a top 3 win. Penn State's resume, their biggest win would be at home against number 24 Illinois, who is going to finish unranked. And their loss would be at home, top 5 Ohio State. So the 10-2 Ohio State has a win that Penn State can't match, can't come close. And the 10-2 Ohio State beat that 11-1 Penn State. Ohio State's the higher rated team in that scenario, which could mean a lot, could mean not too much. If it's between seeds, I don't know, 7 and 8, they both got a home playoff game. If it's between seeds 8 and 9, that's the difference between Penn State playing at home or going to Georgia or Texas. Or if this is a year like I think it might be, like 2019, where there's just a lot of good teams, that could be between seeds 11 and 13 and somebody getting left out. It's a wild one. It's a wild scenario, and there's a whole lot of these. And Indiana, they're in danger. They're in danger at 11-1, I think. There are just some scenarios I've been working on. These guys got a resume that, wait till you hear this thing. You know that it's not been great. It's far worse than not great. Far worse. But we'll get to that in a sec. How's the chat doing today, guys? What's going on, Nate, Lisa? How we doing? RDB, Davey Greenshield, Billy McBride. You guys are awesome. Big one today. Mondays are always big. You guys must have come here to see Chris today. Andy says, it's a joke that Georgia is ranked where they are in the AP. I understand the reasoning, but it's clear that team is off. Let's think about it. Georgia, you had the Kentucky game, the 1-point win, the 10-point win against Mississippi State that went like that deep into the game. Obviously, that half against Alabama, which was one of the worst performances we've seen by a really good team in a while. And then this game against Florida, what was it? They had their third string quarterback in the first. DJ Lagway was 2 for 6, Florida's starting quarterback, when he went out of the game. So he wasn't in there long. And what's his name? Graham Mertz is also out. So they had their third string quarterback at Florida. And that game went deep, competitive game, deep into the game. So you're looking at like 3 duds for Georgia this year already. Versus what? Their one really good performance against Texas. And in that really good performance against Texas, Carson Beck threw 3 interceptions. Now, amazing that they were able to win that game the way they were by 2 touchdowns with their quarterback throwing 3 interceptions. Pretty amazing. A really good performance that day, but it wasn't a complete performance. Yeah, there's definitely something off with this Georgia team. We've all been talking about it here for quite a while. No doubt about that. Really good point, buddy. Dave Greenshield says, I do think Ohio State is clearly the better team, although Penn State did have a number of brain farts. They sure did, and so did the Buckeyes, for sure. And it's about the way they won, to me, that makes it so great. The way you won, that drive at the end, which Dylan and I were talking yesterday, he said he thinks it's, depending on how this season turns out, you could point back to that as one of the greatest drives in Ohio State history. And, that's a bit hyperbolic and maybe living in the moment, but it's one of those serious, the way they won, the way we watched them celebrate, the way they played, it just looked like a different team. It looked like a different team. It didn't look like the same team that was even playing in Eugene. And if I was an Oregon fan like Billy McBride here, I'd be much more concerned dealing with this team if they keep this kind of going moving forward. But I'd like to take a moment to thank our official sponsor. The official sponsor of Juck on Bucks is Columbus Apparel Co. And you can get all your printing or embroidery needs, custom stuff done at Columbus Apparel, as well as a line of Ohio and Columbus gear. They are a really awesome people to deal with. There's a lot of places you can get custom printing done. You do a Google search, 100 of them will pop up, and it's easy, it's fast, but I've done it a lot. 15 years in my career, I have to get this done all the time. Usually something is off and you only got one shot. So deal with people who care. And while you're there, use the promo code JUCK, ColumbusApparelCo.com. Use the promo code JUCK, and they're going to get you 20% off of all your screen printing needs. While you're there, you can check out the Juck on Bucks apparel. If you're interested, we got a full line of stuff that they did up for me. Really nice stuff, not the garbage you get on a YouTube store or something that is screen. They take a hot press and kind of stamp on a patch. Really low quality. Doesn't feel good. 100% cheap cotton. All this stuff is nice blends. I got to pick it out all myself. They sent me all these blanks. I've got more red and black styles of t-shirts and crew necks than you could ever imagine. I'll never be able to wear them all, but really good folks. So check them out, ColumbusApparelCo.com. Anyway, guys, this playoff race has made for some really exciting conference championship races because the stakes are so incredibly high for that auto bid, winning that conference and getting that bye week. And after week 10, we've got a little bit of a clearer picture in a couple of those conferences. One of them is just a total wreck still. But we had very consequential losses in the Big 12 and in the ACC. But the biggest question is, can either of those two conferences get 2 teams into the playoff? Could they both get 2 teams into the playoff? It's still on the table for both of those conferences. You had huge wins in the Big 10 and the SEC. And both of those conference commissioners, Greg Sankey of the SEC, Tony Pettitti of the Big 10, certainly hoping that the ACC and the Big 12 only get that one bid. They're trying hard in the next rendition of this to get auto bids for the Big 10 and the SEC. Not that way yet. So if you happen to get 2 from the ACC and 2 from the Big 12, which not likely, but not a crazy scenario, you got Notre Dame most likely getting in. And of course, you got your highest G5 champion. That's 6 spots. That leaves just 6 spots for the SEC and the Big 10 combined. Right now, as it currently stands, you've got 6 in the SEC that are still in play and have resumes that would correspond with what we would figure to be a playoff resume in a 12-team playoff. And you've got 4 in the Big Ten. That's 10 teams, 6 spots. That doesn't work. Now, we'll see some of them lose, but there's going to be some people irritated at the end of this, and I can't wait. My hope is that they actually do the ACC and the Big 12, get a couple of teams, because I just want to see the chaos. It's what I love about college football. It's what I loved about the old system, when an upset meant everything and you were totally out. Now, I've lost out on that. So if I can pick up some chaos like this at the back end, I'm all for it. But let's get into some of the games. We did watch a lot of the games this weekend after the Buckeye game, but I do want to talk to you about that real quick. So Ohio State, a lot of people clamoring, they want the Buckeyes in Indiana to be a night game. And I saw some people kind of pushing back on that, saying, why would Ohio State fans want to play a night game the week before Michigan? Which is to insinuate the guys would be more worn down, less recovery time, some nonsense like that. And I just, I don't know how you guys feel. I'd like your opinions in the chat. But number one, Indiana is a formidable opponent, and a night game at the Shoe is a better atmosphere and worse for the traveling team. Number two, you know how I feel about scheduling out-of-conference games early on in the season. I want fun college football games, the best we can get. And the same thing applies here. I cannot stand constantly trying to manipulate scheduling and times, always looking forward to make sure you have the easiest path to get this done or that done in the future. I want the best games. I want the best atmospheres. That's why we're college football fans. It's not all about the championship of the postseason for me. That's just my take. But Indiana, do you want that game to be a night game at the Shoe? We now have so many fewer night games. Or would you rather that just be a noon game to make sure everything is status quo as you head into the game at the end of the year? That's the question for the day. I might have another. Anyway, Indiana, obviously really the talk of college football this year, that program. And they played Michigan State this weekend. Michigan State, who gave Ohio State a pretty game first half when the Buckeyes went up there to East Lansing. Michigan State entered the game at 4-4 in conference. I'm sorry, 4-4 total, 2-3 in conference. Indiana had not trailed a single moment in a game this year, but that ended. Michigan State got out to a 10-0 lead. And unfortunately, this Indiana team not played a great schedule. It's way worse than I thought. And I started looking back, and I looked at all the teams they played. I went and looked at everybody's conference record. And if you start off, they're out of conference schedule. Florida International, Western Illinois, and Charlotte. All 3 of those teams are 3-6. So not only not a good out of conference opponent, but all of them were really bad cream puffs. Like, there's no good cream puffs there. They're all bad. Then the Big Ten teams they've beat. UCLA is 2-4. Maryland is 1-4. Northwestern is 2-4. Nebraska is 2-4. Washington is 3-3. Now, I think this Indiana team's pretty good. Really well coached. They're very crisp. They got a lot of talent. But if you're stacking up that resume against somebody else who's a worthy opponent, and let's say they just have one loss and it's against Ohio State, who else do they got on the resume to make it any better? Well, they've got Michigan. Michigan's going to have a losing conference record this year, I believe. They've got nothing. They're going to end this season without a single team on their resume that has a winning conference record. Not one. Now, the best thing they can do is absolutely destroy the schedule in front of them, which is what they did to Michigan State. After getting down 10-0, they scored 47 straight points. 47 straight to win 47-10. Curtis Rourke, his first game back, he was injured. 19 for 29 for 263 and 4 touchdowns. But the Indiana defense, Aiden Childs over at Michigan State, I think is a really talented young quarterback. They sacked him 7 times. They had 15 tackles for loss. That's absolutely getting it done. It's a nasty defense. Their offensive line gave up 0 sacks of Curtis Rourke. They're a formidable team. Definitely are. But, if they're in a close race for the playoffs with that resume, I don't see it working out well for them. I think a lot of people are going to be very, very angry about that because they have become kind of the darling of college football. Kurt Signetti, very popular across college football now, and everything that he's done, as he's kind of laid the blueprint of how you do it right in the transfer portal era, that everybody's going to try to emulate. A lot of people have, but the part that's a little different about him is bringing that core of 12 players from his last destination. Not the easiest thing to do when you're coming from a medium power conference program up to a Big Ten program. He's coming from James Madison, so he was able to get that done. But really interesting, that resume. And I would like to know, after hearing that, if you didn't know that before, that they have such an incredibly weak cast of characters that they've beat up on, does it change anything for you? And again, they've got Michigan and Purdue left on their schedule. Purdue's 0-5 in conference, not a single winning record in any one of those teams, not one. The one that they played with a winning record in conference would have been Ohio State, who I think most of us think probably get a victory there. They might not, but you can't go around scheduling FIU, WIU, and Charlotte in the out of conference. And this is something that I like about the committee, valuing big wins, man. If you go around scheduling like that, you deserve it, really. Let's go to the Ducks. The Ducks this weekend with a huge game for them. And I know Michigan isn't great this year, but being able to take on Ohio State and Michigan in their first year in the Big Ten was huge for them, huge for their fans. And they went in there, handled their business, and got the win against Michigan. And this Michigan team has been playing a little better. I really think that things are looking a lot more competent up there. I haven't been making as much fun of them lately. Oregon was a 14.5-point favorite. I was struggling with that line. I didn't quite know who to pick. Oregon does end up covering that line. Michigan went with Davis Warren, who did not have any interceptions. Colston Loveland, 7 receptions for 112 yards. They're looking better. They're definitely looking better. But that defense of Michigan did not sack Dylan Gabriel at all. That vaunted defense that we were told was going to be the best in the country. They're not. Maybe the biggest news that came out of this game, Oregon's best receiver, Tez Johnson, a really special player. He fell kind of funky. Rumors that maybe he broke his collarbone. I don't know if there's been any updates on that, but he did post an Instagram picture of him on the ground with a broken heart emoji. I've called Ryan Day CIA Day for a long time, not because his brother is a former FBI agent, but because he is so tight-lipped with information. Dan Lanning is Ryan Day times 2. So I don't know how much we're going to hear about that injury anytime soon. But I do know that Oregon has a lot of depth in wide receiver, though it's inexperienced. There's a lot of talent down there. Evan Stewart, Trayshawn Holden, obviously their other 2 wide receivers, and Trayshawn Holden, that's the spitter, the infamous spitter. He had a really good game against Michigan, but just following recruiting, they've nailed some big guys recently. Jeremiah McClellan obviously was a flip from Ohio State. Kyle Casper, Jerion Dickey, like they've landed some guys in recruiting. I have no idea how they are and like what they've done this year, if they've done anything at all. But there's definitely talent. But a huge loss as Tez Johnson, one of the most dynamic players in college football. But the Duck fans that were there, they filtered down to the tunnel. It was a really cool scene for them. And that makes them 2-0 against the Big Ten's traditional powers. Again, no matter whether Michigan's good or not this year, that's a huge moment for them walking into the Big Ten and being able to get that done in their first year. Now, the Buckeyes hoping to get a chance at redemption in the Big Ten championship game, which I will absolutely be attending this year if that gets done. I want to check that out. I definitely want to check that out. The last one I went to was the infamous Urban Meyer sitting on the golf cart eating the old Papa John's against Michigan State, which was not the most enjoyable experience. But let's pull up the Big Ten standings right now. And as you can see, Indiana's still on the top. With Oregon, neither of them have lost a conference game yet. And then you got your 2-1 loss in Ohio State and Penn State. Nobody else here has a shot. Those 4. That line for the Ohio State-Indiana game opened up at Ohio State minus 13.5. It is down to Ohio State minus 10.5. if you'd have asked me to set that line, I'd have probably thought about 10 points. 13.5 does seem a bit much. Is there a scenario where Ohio State blows them out? I don't really see it happening. I did see it happening at Penn State. There was definitely some scenarios at Penn State that I saw the Buckeyes absolutely destroying Penn State. And to be honest, that very well could have happened. That definitely could have happened if it weren't for a couple of careless turnovers and, whatever. But this Indiana team, I see them putting up points regardless of what Ohio State does. I see it being very annoying. And of course, we got to wait, play Purdue. We're a 35-point favorite against Purdue. And then Northwestern at the Wrigley Field game. If anybody's going to that, let me know. I do love the pictures that come out of that game. Not a game I would want to go to. Not interested in going to a football game at Wrigley Field. If I'm going to go to Wrigley Field, I'll go watch the Cubs. Not into it for a football game. Now, the SEC is the biggest cluster right now. The big game of the week in the SEC was Texas A&M. Remember, they just had that one loss at Notre Dame to begin the season, and we all kind of wrote them off, and then they just rattled off every other win after that. I was kind of hoping that they were going to stay undefeated till they had the showdown with Texas, reuniting that rivalry that we have not seen for 15 years. Texas A&M went into South Carolina, a night game at Williams-Brice, which is an incredibly underrated venue because South Carolina usually doesn't get a lot of national publicity because they usually suck. But I made Mrs. Juck come in and watch the intro as they played Sandstorm. What a scene, man. They do it awesome at South Carolina. There's been a lot of talk about Ohio State, the environment, the nighttime environment. And immediately after South Carolina, Tennessee's came on at night. And Tennessee in the black uniforms, they did it up. It was just awesome. We've seen Nebraska's. I played it on the show here. Awesome. Ohio State's got to level up. Ross Bjork is working on it right now. I can't wait. But none of it matters if we can't get some night games back. And on that subject, Penn State has the whiteout coming up this Saturday. The whiteout is Penn State hosting Washington, which doesn't sound tremendously exciting, but Washington has been pretty good this year. Jed Fish has done a hell of a job. In fact, they just beat USC to give Lincoln Riley his 5th loss in the Big Ten in his first year in the Big Ten. This dude has lost 5 conference games. So pathetic. But that's not my point. My point is that Penn State game has been relegated to Peacock. Peacock. The whiteout has been relegated to Peacock. I know we got a lot of things to thank these TV networks about, like they're the reason, the driving force behind a lot of this stuff and a lot of the things we get to see. So many more games, all that. I mean, really, I guess it's us, right? We're the ones that are watching. But the way they have screwed this up, the fact that the night game wasn't Ohio State, Penn State, or the whiteout wasn't Ohio State, Penn State, and now just adding insult to injury that the whiteout is on Peacock. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Washington's got to be the opponent for that. I mean, I just hate it. I absolutely hate it. But we get very few night games anymore, and when we do, they're not the best opponents, and it stinks. So when we talk about these things like these electric atmospheres at places like Williams-Brice or Tennessee or LSU, you got to have the night games for it to matter, for that crazy atmosphere to be fun. Like you have to have them. They're getting them in the SEC. Fox and Big Noon Kickoff has been kind of screwing Ohio State on that and the rest of the Big Ten too. But I don't see it changing anytime soon. But let's get back to this game. As Texas A&M, they were a 2-point favorite, and there was a lot of buzz going the other way about South Carolina heading into this game. I wasn't going for it. They weren't going to get me on this one. You know how I feel about this. When all the public is going one way, I'm going the other. I stuck with A&M. I made the wrong choice. South Carolina got up 14-3 real quick, but A&M came back. At halftime, it was 20-20, and then South Carolina shut them down the rest of the game. 44-20 final, and Texas A&M, who, had the potential to maybe get to the SEC championship, still does, but for the first time this year, they looked like a team that was probably overachieving a little bit in their first year under Mike Elko, but that is a really good team. They don't have great quarterback play. The fact that they've done what they've been able to do without really good quarterback play, it's really impressive. But it does maybe spoil that awesome matchup that we might have been able to see with Texas and Texas A&M to end the season. South Carolina quarterback, Lenoris. I love Lenoris Sellers. Kid's awesome, man. He's not a great quarterback, but incredibly exciting. Really fun to watch, as is that South Carolina team in general. And they're just getting better and better. They got a ton of skill on the defensive line, including Dylan Stewart, one of the best young guys in the game. A lot of fun to watch. But let's head to the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. We hit on it a little bit, but Billy Napier in Florida have been playing a little tougher recently, and I've been a big critic of Billy Napier, as you know. Bonehead Billy, that's his nickname. I gave it to him because I do think he is a bonehead, but his team's been playing much better. The lines of scrimmage have been better. They've got a little mojo going, and they came into the game. I think they were 4-3 overall in conference, or 4-3 overall and 2-2 in conference, which is much better than it looked like they were going to start out at after that destruction by Miami early on. Georgia, they've obviously, as we talked about, played a couple of dud games this year, the Mississippi State game, the Kentucky game, that half at Alabama. And we can add this onto their list of duds, as they just did not at all look like a championship level team to me. They just didn't. They were down 13-6 at halftime to Florida. I mean, come on now. And that was not against their Florida superstar quarterback, DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway had a non-contact injury, looked like something around his hamstring, ended up not even walking off on his own. It looks like it'll take a little time to me, and that sucks for the Florida Gator fans, as being able to watch a really awesome young quarterback, even when your team sucks, can give you hope and be exciting. And I think DJ Lagway is the type of kid with first overall draft pick type of talent. Really fun to watch, really good kid. His high school film is some of the most fun you'll ever watch from a quarterback. So that really sucks. But the kid who was a Heisman contender going into this game, on the other side, Carson Beck, 25 for 40, like I said, 3 picks. Now, this kid, Carson Beck, who did not go to the NFL, decided to come back to Georgia this year, 3 interceptions against Florida, 3 interceptions against Alabama, 3 interceptions against Texas, and 2 interceptions against Mississippi State. And I was thinking last night, can you even imagine what it would be like if Will Howard had put up stats like that in Ohio State's 4 most competitive games this year? I mean, my gosh, dude, that guy should have gone to the NFL. Now, he does have 1 more year of eligibility left. Does he end up coming back to Georgia? At this point, I think we should all be rooting for, yes, come back, Carson, because something's off with that dude for sure. But when we look at Georgia's resume, they got a huge one coming up again just this Saturday with Ole Miss, and they also still have to play Tennessee. Big wins. They've beaten Texas. They've beaten Clemson. So 2 really good wins, and they can definitely split between Ole Miss and Tennessee. They'll still be in no matter what with that resume. But do you think that Billy Napier is playing himself through the adversity this year to get another year? I'm starting to think he just might be, because it's not about the wins and losses sometimes. It's about how you're playing. And his team looks like they're really buying in. They're playing for him. I think that they might be bringing him back, which is amazing. Earlier this season, I thought there was no way. You also got to factor in DJ Lagway. Not often your program runs across a recruit like that. And if Napier goes, my guess is that, he decides to go look for greener pastures. He doesn't want to be in there for a rebuild. We're talking about a kid with amazing talent, amazing potential. So just my thoughts on that. But in another rivalry game, Kentucky headed into Tennessee. Kentucky has been in shambles since that win against Ole Miss. In fact, Ole Miss was their only conference win this year so far, but they headed into Tennessee. Tennessee has just lost that 1 game to Arkansas, which I kind of wrote them off a little bit after that game. They're still right there in it. Tennessee was a 16.5-point favorite, and Kentucky led them 10-7 at halftime at night in Tennessee. Tennessee has owned Kentucky forever. Even in Tennessee's 20-year slump, they still own Kentucky. Kentucky couldn't keep the pace in the second half. Hell of an effort, but in the end, 28-18 Tennessee. Tennessee's running back Dylan Sampson, who's been having the quietest, amazing season that we've seen out of anybody this year, 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kid is a stud. Nico Iamaleava, probably better than he's been recently. And he obviously shows flashes of amazing talent, still not being able to put it all together. But that's a dangerous team. That's a really dangerous team whose best win is Alabama, and their loss, Arkansas, the huge game coming up, Tennessee and Georgia for them. And they also end the season with Vanderbilt. If they can beat Georgia, they're probably going to find themselves in the SEC championship game. And like I said, I think I wrote these guys off a little too soon because when you look at them, the defense is stellar. They can run the football. They got an amazing back. They got a good offensive line. And they got a quarterback who's capable of making unique plays that can really pop at any time. That's a dangerous team. That's a team I don't think I would want to get a draw against because that is a team in the playoffs that if they put it together, if they play their best game, they can embarrass you. I really think they can. A solid team for sure. Now, number 19, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I think we all wrote off, right? They get embarrassed by Kentucky. They lose again to LSU in a game obviously a tough environment. Took it to overtime. They were winning the entire game. LSU was not leading an entire minute in that game until they won in overtime. But I kind of wrote them off at that point. The mojo around the program just felt bad. Everything felt off. And they go out. They're 3-2 in conference. Arkansas was the opponent. Everybody thought, again, like that South Carolina, Texas A&M game, that this was a game where Arkansas might really show up. And on this particular game, I was with everybody. I thought Arkansas would show up. They played good at the line of scrimmage. They played Tennessee really tough. And it didn't happen. Holy guacamole. Ole Miss absolutely hammered them. 63-31. Jackson Dart, like I said earlier, 515 yards, 6 touchdowns. The Ole Miss defense recorded 8 sacks and 13 tackles for loss against Arkansas. Fantastic. But they got Georgia this weekend. Now they're hot. That's going to be a fun game. Probably one of the most fun this weekend. And we've also got Alabama and LSU coming up soon. But let's pull up the SEC standings and take a look at where they sit. So you've got Georgia at 5-1 in conference, just 1 loss. Texas A&M 5-1 in conference, but 2 losses overall. Tennessee just 1 loss in conference. Texas just 1 loss in conference. LSU just 1 loss in conference. And Ole Miss is even still in it. Alabama's still in it. Like so many of these guys are still in it. This is the most chaotic conference by far. And a lot of people are going to say, SEC fans, well, they're all so good. They're just beating up on each other. They're inevitably going to have a lot of 2-loss teams there that are, in my opinion, going to still be really good teams, but going to be tremendous to see how this puppy shakes out. And I can't wait to see this first playoff ranking. Now, my pick to make it to the SEC championship in the beginning of the year was Texas. I still think that they are going to do that. And I think I'm going to go ahead and say right now that I think that Tennessee is going to be that team that's going to play against them. And they are going to battle for who's the real UT, which is the argument they have all the time, in an all orange, those slightly different shades battle for the SEC championship. One more hilarious note this week. Vanderbilt, I thought this week, I bet against them. Auburn was a 7-point favorite. They were heading into Auburn. Now, the story goes, Diego, their quarterback, Vanderbilt's quarterback, when he was at New Mexico State last year, they went into Auburn and they beat Auburn. And then when they beat Alabama this year, the kid, he owns the whole state of Alabama, right? So they're going back into Alabama, only this time he's with Vandy. And they won again. I could not believe it. Auburn let Vandy come in and win. And at this point, Vanderbilt's just a really solid team. Like, there's nothing else you can say about it. You take Texas to the wire. You beat Alabama. You go into Auburn, which, say what you want about Auburn. Hugh Freeze sucks. I can't stand them. They've been terrible this year, but a very talented team, and that's a tough place to play, and a very prideful fan base, and one of my favorite stadiums in all of college football. I love Jordan Hare. I really like Auburn. I like Auburn being good. I feel like they are the forever underdog, being the school that is in the state with Alabama. You know what I mean? Like the forever underdog. And that's kind of why I've always rooted for them down there in the SEC. But I hate Hugh Freeze. I think he's pretty despicable as a human being. I think he's petulant. I think he's a jerk. I think he's a cheat. He's a phony. And I just cannot stand him. I hope that they get rid of him. I don't care that he's got this amazing recruiting class. We know how he's orchestrating that amazing recruiting class. The next guy can do just as well. What's clear is his coaching chops aren't what they once were. That's clear. All right, let's go to the ACC. Now, you guys know how high I've been on SMU, the boys from Dallas. And yes, a lot of it has to do with their stellar uniforms. The Mustangs look amazing, but I was very much looking forward to this SMU game against Pitt, both undefeated in conference. And SMU was hosting. The game was in Dallas. It wasn't an exciting game. SMU just totally destroyed them, 48-25, but it wasn't anywhere near that close. And SMU head coach Rhett Lashley is a total stud at 40 years old. Guy's first year in the ACC with a program that everybody thought, well, okay, welcome to the big leagues, right? Just killing it, man. Killing it. He's won big. He's won close games. He's made a lot of good decisions. And when people make this stupid who you going to get argument when talking about replacing big time head coaches, which is a lot of, not happening this week, but a lot of what was floating around level, who you going to get, who you going to, and I hate it. It's such a phony argument because I would say someone like Rhett Lashley and whoever I was talking to would not know who the hell that was. But these are the guys you go after when you're trying to upgrade your program and get that next up and coming coach. The dude's awesome. He's fun to watch. I love him. So SMU does their man, and SMU now just needs to win their remaining games, and they're going to make it to the ACC championship with a chance to make the playoff in their first year in the ACC, which is really cool. And we talked about that schedule a couple weeks ago. They've got Boston College, 1-3 in conference. They've got Virginia, 2-3 in conference, and they've got Cal, 0-4 in conference, which makes SMU big favorites now to run the table and make it to the ACC championship, which is just stunning to me. Now, how about Clemson and Miami? How's SMU going to make it over them? Well, Clemson hosted Louisville in Death Valley. Clemson was a 10-point favorite. I didn't like it. I went the other way. I took Louisville, and Louisville won the game 33-21. And it was just such a lousy performance by Clemson at home, at night, against a ranked team that you'll ever see. Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik had been playing good recently. He was 33 of 56. Their running back Phil Maffa had 171 yards. He's a stud. But actually, Clemson outrushed Louisville in that game and outpassed Louisville. But there was a really bad decision by Clemson at the end of the game, which turned out to be pretty inconsequential. But one of those decisions, when you see a coach make it, it's just absolutely inexcusable. They had the chance to cut it to a 2-possession game after a touchdown to make it an 11-point game with a 2-point conversion, right? They chose not to. They kicked the extra point. And Dabo, it's obviously the wrong decision. Dabo was asked afterwards about it, and he totally lied. He's like, we checked the charts and we triple checked, and everything said kick the extra point there. There's no chart that's going to tell you that. Like, it was a straight up lie. And I had that clip loaded up to show you guys, but unfortunately, you know how I am with technology. It's not there anymore. I'm looking for it, I swear. But my point is, to get a chance at the conference championship game, Clemson's going to need some help now. They did control their own destiny. Now, can they make the playoffs with now 2 losses? Remember, they lost to Georgia to start the season. What else do they have on their schedule between Georgia and Louisville? Not a single team with a winning record. Not a single one. Who do they got left? Virginia Tech, Pitt, Citadel, and South Carolina. So Pitt and South Carolina probably going to give them some games. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost one more. But their chances, I think, right now for the playoffs, pretty long. Miami, they fell way behind Duke. Then they pushed a button just like that and won 55-31. They remain undefeated, remaining on their schedule, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. So, just like Texas, I said Miami was going to win the ACC championship game. You guys told me I was an idiot. I remember. I just don't feel anybody in the ACC can match the firepower that they have. And some goober called me a Miami fan. Boy, you could not be further from the truth. I hate them. And I think their fans are the second worst fan base in the country. That's not the point, though. This conference is very clear now. The ACC is going to be Miami and SMU in the championship game. if they both win out, which they will be heavily favored to do so. And the way that you can now get pretty easily 2 ACC teams in the college football playoffs is if those two meet up in the conference championship in Charlotte and SMU beats Miami. Miami will have a 12-0 regular season and they lost the conference championship. That is 100% guaranteed in, and SMU gets the auto bid. Now you've got two teams from the ACC with Clemson potentially as a 10-2 team with an admittedly pretty lousy they'll have at that point one ranked win. They would have beaten Pitt, which would be ranked when they played, maybe knocked out by the time they lost to them. But that's two teams guaranteed for sure from the ACC. Now, how about the Big 12? You had two really big upsets as undefeated Iowa State went down to Texas Tech. Texas Tech, they scored with 26 points in the end to take the lead. It was pretty sad for those supporting Matt Campbell, an Ohioan, a dude from Mount Union, a heartbreaker for sure. And undefeated Iowa State goes down. They fall to 4-1 in conference. And then we saw Kansas State head down to Houston, a really bad Houston team, and they got upset 24-19. That's now their second conference loss, which pretty much eliminates them from any playoff talk. So let's pull up the Big 12 standings and take a look at these, because what we've got here is BYU undefeated at 5-0 in conference, Iowa State and Colorado, both with one conference loss, though Colorado does have 2 losses overall. But that doesn't matter. All Colorado's got to do now is fight to get in that conference championship game, and they can get it done. And if they get in there and win, they'll be in the playoffs, which is a stunning turn of events. You guys know how I hate on Dion. He's amongst my list of coaches that I always hate on, like Billy Napier. And I would have to give some serious props for that. In fact, all the coaches I hate on have been on the upswing. Sharon Moore, Billy Napier, Deion Sanders, their programs have been on the up and up. So they're making me look bad here. But you got BYU undefeated. BYU has 2 ranked wins. How do you get 2 teams from the Big 12 in the playoff? The same way as the ACC. If BYU with 2 ranked wins and they have an undefeated season, they enter into the conference championship and they lose to one of those teams that beats them, gets the auto bid, you've now got 2 teams in the Big 12 in that championship, or in the playoffs as well. Pretty easy scenario, pretty straightforward of a way you've got an easy path to get 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, Notre Dame, a G5, which again leaves you just 6 for the Big 10 and the SEC. In the Big 10, you got 4 teams with a realistic playoff shot. Oregon with the easiest route. Ohio State and Indiana will play to get to the Big 10 championship. Penn State still definitely in the picture. Just 1 loss. Looks like they'll be an 11-1 team at the end. And in the SEC, you've got 1-loss teams, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee. 2-loss teams, Ole Miss, LSU, Texas A&M. Big 12, undefeated BYU. 1-loss Iowa State, 2-loss Colorado. In the ACC, you've got undefeated Miami, undefeated SMU, 2-loss Clemson, 1-loss Pittsburgh. All these guys got a shot to get in. So what we get to see tomorrow night is how the committee feels about these people's resume the first time out, the first rendition. And they say that they stop and do it from scratch every week. We'll see. There's been times where I've doubted that. And I think we can point to some clear instances where they have not done that. So it's very, very important. Now, I told you guys that I was on a heater when we entered the weekend, 6 straight winning weeks of the official Juck on Bucks picks. And every week we go over the time slots of our viewing windows, the noon slot, the afternoon slot, and the evening games. And we discuss our favorite games in each window. And then I pick each game against the line. And we started 8 weeks ago. I lost week 1, have won every week since. We're up 14 units. So let's go over the week's picks. Ohio State -3.5 over Penn State. We know how that one went. Arkansas, I took them +7 against Ole Miss. That was bad. Illinois at home, we didn't talk about this game. Illinois at home was getting 3 points from Minnesota. I don't know what happened there. Illinois lost the game, and I don't know how they knew that was coming, but they lost. Auburn, -7 hosting Vanderbilt. I thought this was the Vandy Magic running out here. I was wrong. Oregon, -14.5 at Michigan. That was definitely a winner. That cashed. Georgia, -16.5 against Florida. Georgia only won by 14, so that was a loser. Texas Tech, +13.5 at Iowa State. That was a winner. Texas Tech wins outright. Indiana, -8 against Michigan State. Indiana, just bet them. Just bet them and don't even worry about what the number is. Louisville, +10 at Clemson. That was definitely a winner. Texas A&M, -2 against South Kakalaki was a loser. Wisconsin, +3 at Iowa. I actually took Wisconsin on the money line. Big time loser. Washington, +2.5 against USC. That was a winner. Love that one being a winner. I took USC last week and actually won with them. I've been perfect with USC recently. But that was a big winner. Kentucky, +16.5 at Tennessee. They didn't win the game, but they won. They covered. SMU, -7.5 against Pitt. Another winner, and that is 8-6. 7 straight weeks that we win at the Juck on Bucks official picks, +16 total units. And you know what you can do to place your bets. MyBookie, where if you use the promo code JUCK, they're going to match your deposit 100% all the way up to $1,000. You can play all your college games, all your NFL games. They'll even give you a $10 casino chip. I don't care for that. Put it on 7, spin the wheel on roulette, and maybe you could turn it into some more. I'm into the college football betting. That's how I get down. And you can see that we can do it together every week. If you join me, you'd be making money. And all those picks every Friday are documented. You can go back and check them. I'm not lying. 7 straight winning weeks. That's a tough thing to do. So probably we're about to go on 7 losing weeks, but we'll cross that road when we get to it. Right now, I'm getting paid. I'm getting you paid, and I'm giving you the picks. Like, what more could you ask for? Do I physically need to take your phone and enter this for you? You guys are the best. All right, my friends. Let's get to a couple chats in our segment that we call at the end of the show, Jucking Around, named by the Juck guys themselves. Yo, Chad bro, how we doing, buddy? General Chrome, so mad about losing out on Dylan Stewart, and he is the freshman phenom defensive edge who plays for South Carolina and not Ohio State, but very well could have, should have. That sucks. Alpha Dog says South Carolina has the best D-line in the country. They are scary. Lisa brings up a really good point about Ohio State traveling to Northwestern as they go play at Wrigley Field. I wonder if it's going to be crazy windy like it was a few years ago when we had to play at Northwestern. What's interesting is they built that little miniature stadium right next to their new complex. In that little mini stadium, they are only playing games up until November. So they stopped playing games there now. So now they're going to play all their games elsewhere. And I don't know if that was because of the weather, because it was going to get too cold there. Like, it is right on the water. Or if it's too small and they wanted a bigger gate. They were only selling tickets to season ticket holders for that place because it's so small. And I clowned them for that. But man, that's a pretty cool venue to go watch a Big Ten game, to be honest. Definitely pretty cool. But no, you make up a good point. Sometimes it's really rough there. Mika wishes we had Dylan Stewart. Everybody loves Dylan Stewart. Billy McBride, who is a Duck guy, thinks that Beck is awful. I like watching him fall apart. Did anybody see that reverse hurdle by Saquon Barkley yesterday? So Saquon with the spin move first, an amazing spin move that's on its own would have been a great highlight. And then at the back end of that spin move, he just does a little split in the air and jumps and ends up becoming a reverse hurdle, which it was just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Love that guy. Love that guy. He loves the weight room. I love running backs like that. Like Nick Chubb, our very own. And we got some super chats to get to. Bucks by Fitty, thanks for the $4.99, buddy. Appreciate you. He asked in the chat, do you think this will be the starting O-line moving forward, even when Zen gets healthy? I sure hope so. Also, like the video. Yeah, guys, like the video. That'd be cool. Love the show. Thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate you loving the show. listen, I don't know what anybody else thinks, but I 100% think that not only is this the recipe going forward that they're going to stick with, but I think they're probably kicking themselves in the ass for not starting, like we talked about before, with this after the Oregon game, with all that time leading up for the rest of the season. You do have a couple more weeks of to get cohesive with this before you play Indiana, before you play Michigan. But it's very clear. Like, how clear is this, right? 100%, I think that's the way we go. Blue Wolverine, thank you so much for the $9.99. Did you feel like your team has been showing a little more cohesiveness, playing a little bit better? The quarterback's certainly been a little better, but with 4 losses on the schedule and Indiana and Ohio State still left, I think who is the last game to, or there's one more. I think it's Northwestern, maybe. You're probably looking at a 6-6 season per the odds. How's that going to feel? I would just like to know how's that going to feel for you. But no, I do appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much for the $9.99. Hey, Raphael. Raphael's not been around in a while. Raphael missed us all. What a wild game this past weekend. We were a few missed deep balls away and a goal line fumble away from winning big. Got to execute. And you do. You absolutely do. But you know what? The best thing about not executing in a big game like that is when you can gut out a win and still come away feeling great, even though you didn't play a perfect game. And let's keep in mind also that the other team is a really good team that hinders you from playing that perfect game you want to play, which is what I had to talk to a lot of Buckeye fans and Oregon fans after that game, as both were saying, well, we didn't even play our best game. We could have scored this. And both sides were pointing to like 6 plays or referee calls that if all these went a different way, we could have won by 25. Yes, these guys, you realize they're saying the same thing. And you both have valid arguments, but the point is, when you're playing a football game, that's not how it works. Doreen says hello to everybody. Hey, Juckeye and Menace. What a great day to be a Buckeye. So excited to see this team show their talent. Offensive line fixed, defense BIA. Let's get it. Let's get it indeed, Doreen. Mike Green, my guy, thank you so much for the $1.99. Juck, Honda McCord isn't built for this team. Bill is. And this was my biggest issue with McCord. It really, obviously there's a lot of things about his play, but I'm so big on team chemistry, team juice, team leadership, the intangible things that you don't see. Everything we saw at that Penn State game, not just from Will Howard, but from the secondary, from the offensive line, from the defensive line. The juice, the energy, the want to be there, like all those things that make me proud, that make me feel like I love this team. I love Ohio State. Like, it's all those things. Give me that 100 out of 100 times. Like, give me that over so much. I don't like the sanitized feel. I don't like the NFL. I'm not a fan of the NFL. I'm a college football fan. That team against Penn State felt like Ohio State teams of my youth. Like, that was just everything to me. It's great. And Kyle McCord, no, absolutely not. Doesn't have that. No knock on him. It's just not who he is. Not my style at all. Will Howard, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Love it. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate you. All right, my friends. I appreciate you so much. I got a lot of stuff to do again today, but I'm going to have to go chop to it. And tomorrow, with it being election day, probably going to be a really busy day at work for me. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do our live show tomorrow, because I'll probably be at work a lot of the day, and I won't be able to sneak out. I'll have to get in early. So I don't think we're going to end up having our normal live show today, or I'm sorry, Tuesday. So I'll probably be back with you Wednesday. Sorry about that, but sometimes duty calls. Anyway, I appreciate you guys all so much. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do like the video and subscribe if you haven't. And I will probably see you back Wednesday. There's a chance I might be able to pop in tomorrow, but I doubt it. But thank you so much, guys. Talk to you soon. Chuck and Bucks out. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck. Who the is Juck?
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks. Juck on Bucks.
Juck. Juck on Bucks.
My guy Juck.
Juck on Bucks. My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juck on Bucks.
Okay.
Juck is junk.
The Juck eyes. The Juck
Juck on Bucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.